Thank you. I don't think that I will ever look at a chicken in the same way again. But if it's one thing we can be sure of, if private sector advocacy is weak, it's not because it does not have very able and strong advocates. We are well over time. There can be no questions, I'm afraid. So we'll have to leave questions for a later point this afternoon. But if I may just quickly try to wrap up what I'm saying here, what we've said here today. What does that mean?
You can take a few minutes of my time.
I'm sorry?
You can take a few minutes to take some questions.
What?
You can take a few minutes to take some
How long? Just to wrap up the session. I think what we can devise from this is that from what the panel has said, the private sector needs to up its game. It needs to become greater and better advocates than it's been in recent time. And national voices in the private sector have to be transformed into a regional voice, if that voice is to be respected. There is distance at the moment between governments and the private sector, and we must find ways of bridging that distance. The Trinidad model of a standing cabinet committee seems to offer a solution, but it doesn't seem to be a perfect solution, since mistrust still exists between the partners. But in any event, export-led growth needs not only the integration of production in the region, but it also needs meaningful collaboration between governments and the private sector. And that, it seems to me, is the task that is before us. And we'll take questions from...
My name is Paula Cauldron from St. Lucia. I'm the president of the St. Lucia Manufacturers Association. My colleagues asked me not to talk too much whilst I was here, but so I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I have to. We are a VUP-VAP, Vai country. We are reactionary. We are not proactive. But I want to begin by thanking the Caribbean Export for providing this forum to allow everybody, because we have heard the whole perspective, at least the 35 years of my being in business and being involved with government and other institutions. Everything that has been said is correct. And what I was hoping at the end of this is that we would all sit down and come up with a strategy and prioritize what we think we should go forward with. Having said that, I wanted to tell Mr. Ramesh, who spoke earlier, he's right there now, that in fact, what you were talking about that the United States does, Trinidad does to the rest of the OECS. And I want to let you know that they put in all trade barriers to prevent us from exporting our products to Trinidad and Tobago. The OECS is a unit, and I have heard nothing said here today about citizenship versus economic citizenship. And if you all do not think that that is not going to affect the goods and services, it is. Unless the countries, I see Antigua is going that way, makes a decision to protect themselves, to protect the other OECS countries, and they do like Dominica, then we will have everybody who buys a passport coming into the rest of the OECS and providing the type of competition that's not necessary. We talk about we should not be protecting WTO and all that. Of course, that's what we are doing. All of us are doing that. The United States is doing that, as Ramesh said. Europe is doing that. We just heard the gentleman say the percentage of increase on imports. But yet still in the region, we are not doing anything to help ourselves or protect ourselves, and we are not working together sufficiently as a unit. Come January 2014, we are CARICOM, one unit, all right? And I have seen maybe 30 consultants over the last 4 years, many from CARICOM, and I see nothing happening. In St. Lucia, we believe CARICOM is just an institution to pay ex-politicians and to do nothing. And I'm sure that's the perspective of a lot of other people. We're just not acting, and we are not implementing anything at all. I come back to OECS. They're in St. Lucia. They don't talk to the private sector. They don't talk to the Ministry of Commerce. The Ministry of Trade is separated from the Ministry of Commerce. They only go through the external affairs. And I was saying to myself the other day, they've got money from EU for the private sector. Who did they talk to in St. Lucia or the OECS to get funding for the private sector? And for what? Because they certainly didn't speak to the Manufacturers Association, and I don't know that they spoke to the Chamber of Commerce. So, I mean, there's a lot I would like to say because there's so much that has happened, and we are just, we're not working together. We are doing the same thing to each other. We are working against each other, in fact. And I think that we need to really strategize and look and see where we would go. The smaller manufacturers, I mean, I have been exporting 31% to the OECS. I'm involved in the manufacturing of awnings, blinds, and shutters. And that export has gone down because of certain things happening in the region. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to look at other markets. But we need to make sure that our small companies can survive in the region. Otherwise, we're going to have some serious problems. Thanks.
Thank you. Did anybody want to respond to that?
Yes. I'll take a try. Or you want to go first? Yeah, go ahead.
Testing 1, 2, yeah. Just to say that with respect to Trinidad and Tobago doing the same thing that the United States does, listen, it means that we need to collaborate. Jamaica has made significant allegations about Trinidad and Tobago preventing their goods from coming. And we have spoken to Jamaica, so much so that we have set up a trade desk at the TTMA dedicated to trade relations between Jamaica and Trinidad. And I must say the desk is in existence for, I think, about 6 months to a year now. And since that has been established, the relationship with Jamaica has improved considerably. With St. Lucia, unfortunately, there's no great synergies between the Manufacturers Association of St. Lucia and that of Trinidad. It says that we need to talk. It says that we need to come together. And I am sitting here as the CEO of TTMA, and I'm giving you guarantees at this point in time, not to solve the problem, but try to find out where the problems lie. So if you have issues coming into Trinidad and Tobago, I can't tell you I could get the government to make changes along those lines, but I could tell you, I could try to figure out what the problems are for you. And if the problems are such that we could interject and solve them, we would work assiduously to solve these problems for you. I'm going to give you that guarantee as I sit here as the CEO of the TTMA.
I'd like to second what you're saying, because often I used to be called on, even by governments, by ministers, to try and solve impasses between countries with trading. Certainly it's large trading items like issues with rice and those other things within the region. However, I must say, in fairness to discussion, I have been to St. Lucia and spoken in St. Lucia to varied audiences at least 5 times. I've made the point that we need to consider that for a business to be sustainable, it has to grow. It seems illogical to me when we look across the region and we see that we are existing in marketplaces that have exhibited no growth over many years in terms of anything meaningful outside of external injections into our region, that we ourselves as business people need to have dialogue at a different level. It cannot be that we think we're going to be safe by locking out other small producers out of our market and having those discussions. We have to now find the ways to operate in markets outside of the ones that are no longer proving to be very viable for us. And in order to do that, we need to upscale. So when 2 businesses can't make it on their own, they need to consider what the rest of the world has to do. That is mergers, joint ventures, things like that, so that you can operate outside of a shrinking environment. That is paramount. But our own individual mistrust, not mistrust between islands, but mistrust within countries, is defeating us. It's not an economic matter. That is a matter for mindset. And mindset is something that has to be tackled if it is going to hold us back from growing our businesses into real players in a more globalized environment. That's my message. Has been 5 times to St. Lucia. Many of the other countries, 3 or 4 times in Antigua. Everywhere in the OECS I've been to with that message during the 2 years that I was president of the CAIC and a couple years before that as a vice president of the CAIC. And I just think that we're taking a rather long time to get the message clearly. Perhaps I'm not explaining it well.
Frank?
Just speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Oops, sorry. I would give you the real experience of WORSPA in this regard. WORSPA started off initially as an organization of 4 countries: Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Jamaica. It was felt that over the years there were real advantages in bringing all of the other rum producers on board, especially the OECS rum producers. There are differences in scale of production. There are differences in export capacity. There will be real differences and trepidations in joining actors of different scale and economic muscle. Fast forward to 2000, thereabouts, there was trepidation among the existing members of WORSPA with respect to admitting the Dominican Republic as a member of the WORSPA fraternity. Dominican Republic, by itself, its market, right, its rum production is just as great as probably the whole of the CARICOM rum producers combined. There were at the time, significant differences in outlook, in market penetration, also in strategy. We had to find a common point where we could collaborate. My message to you is that there will always be differences. Where we can be and must be successful is in finding those areas where we can mutually collaborate. Those areas where we have a point of departure, where we have differences, those can be worked out. Because at the end of the day, we stand together or we fall. Thank you, John.
I think we've got time for one more question. Yes.
Stacey Lagrenard, de la Grenade Industries, Grenada. I would like to thank the Caribbean Export for having put on this colloquium, because many of the speakers have given a historical perspective to the issues affecting manufacturers, which I think has been invaluable to many of us here. One comment I have to make is to Mr. Ramdeen, who spoke of the need for collaboration among the manufacturers of the region. I think because of some of the issues that seem to be falling in between the Caribbean Export and the organization CARIFORUM, CARICOM, there needs to be collaboration there. And what comes to mind is the shipping issue, which a number of studies have been done, and Caribbean Export would say that is not within their area, and CARICOM seems not to be getting the message. So there needs to be some collaboration if all of this money is being spent on export promotion and there is no means to export within the region where there is a big market available to us manufacturers. Thank you.
Do you want to take that? And then I'll ask James to add something to it. Yeah?
I think we all recognize one of the major supply side constraints for trade within the region is the whole issue of shipping line. And attending the last quota and the one before that, I was advised and told at the quota that There is a pilot project on stream to be funded by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, actually, where there will be the development of a shipping line, cargo and passenger, among the islands of Trinidad and Tobago, I think Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia, if I'm not mistaken. I may not have the exact countries right, but around that cone there. That is a project that's supposed to come on stream sometime this year. The pilot project is supposed to be funded by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The question is, how are we to make this sustainable? That is the real issue, because the government is not going to fund this project infinitum. So we really have to consider it. We need to see how it's going to work. We recognize the need for such a project to be in place. The question is, where are we going to get the funding to make it sustainable? Jimmy.
James.
This working? Yeah. I just want to make a quick comment on this thing of shipping. I think often, this logistics thing is a red herring. I'll give you an example of what I mean. When we started to talk about shipping corn out of Belize into the rest of the Caribbean, everybody said, well, how are you going to do it? There's no shipping. The ports in Belize don't have bulk handling capacity. But once we decided to get the project on the ground, things began to happen. You know what we did? What the shipping companies did? They take a 20-foot container into the port in Belize, they upend it, they fill it with 50,000 pounds of corn, close it up, put it back on the ship, it goes to Guyana, they turn the container the other way around, empty the 50,000 pounds. A simple problem. And everybody was saying it couldn't be done. Right now we have ships running all the time, taking corn from Belize, using the same technology. You upend the container, you fill it, you take it to Guyana, you turn it the other way and empty the corn, and the thing is working well. We're paying a little bit more for the shipping. Shipping out of Belize to Guyana is costing us about $51 US a ton. Out of Miami, it costs about $35 US a ton. But the point is, we are developing intra-regional trade. We are building bridges with our Caribbean sisters and brothers, and we are making the thing happen. I think if there's a will, you will find a way to make it happen.
James, did you want to add anything to that? You? No? Well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's a very good note on which to end it. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.